Hello everyone and welcome to my guide to Ancient Gears. As far as Duel Links is concerned, Ancient Gear is a deck that has taken many forms over the year. First as a beatdown oriented strategy when Ancient Gear and Company released in November 2016, focused on dropping Ancient Gear Golem as soon as possible thanks to their skill Middle Age Mechs. Then as a gimmicky OTK deck using Ancient Gear Ultimate Golem when that card released in February 2018. And then as an aggressive deck focused around getting Ancient Gear Reactor Dragon out as soon as possible thanks to the release of the Ancient Gear Structure Deck EX in February 2019. Veteran viewers of this channel will notice that I've already made a guide to Ancient Gears all the way back in 2022, and then entered a tournament with Ancient Gears in 2024, which predictably enough, ended up very poorly. But the release of the new History of the Victor minibox in April 2025 gave a breath of fresh air to this archetype, introducing a lot of recent support and a completely new skill for the deck to use. Skill. I don't usually start with talking about this skill, but it is very important to take a look at this skill to get a better idea of the new Ancient Gear playstyle. So, what does Ancient Gear Engineering say? First and foremost, you can only use this skill's second and third effect once per turn. No restrictions on the amount of time you can use it per duel, which, I guess this is just what skills are now. The first effect per se is that you can't normal or special monsters except Earth Machine monsters and monsters from the extra deck. This is because Ancient Gears are actually Earth Machine monsters, so this works with the skill. The second and first active effect per se allows you to reveal one Ancient Gear Golem or a monster that mentions it in your hand in order to shuffle one card from your hand into the deck and add one Ancient Gear monster from your deck to your hand. So this is basically switcheroo with extra words. There is an additional condition of having AGG or a monster that mentions it in your hand, but you can return any card that you want, not necessarily the card that you revealed, in order to search for any Ancient Gear monster, which is pretty neat. And last but not least, if your opponent does anything during your turn, you get to place one Ancient Gear duel from your hand or deck face up on your field, and you can conduct an additional normal summon this turn. This is pretty strong. This is pretty strong. Any skill that gives you an additional normal is already pretty good, but this one also gives you a trap, which, as we're gonna see in a couple of minutes, is actually really powerful as well. Needless to say, this skill is imperative if you want to play Ancient Gears in the Year of Our Lord 2025. Main deck monsters. The first monster we have to take a look at is the OG AGG. It is a level 8 3000 attack and defense Earth Machine monster that can be special summon. That's a lie, has piercing and prevents your opponent from activating back row after it declares an attack. You might think AGG is an outdated piece of junk, but it is actually somewhat important in the deck as it is a skill target and combos with some other cards in order to make it not completely useless. Other than that, there's no real reason to play AGG. You know, it's a card that came out 20 years ago and has had to have the entire archetype revolve around it in order to stay relevant, so you only want to play one copy of it and not any more. Ancient Gear Golem's replacement came in the form of Ancient Gear Dark Golem, which is also an Earth Machine monster that shares its stats and level with AGG. Its names become Ancient Gear Golem while in the field or in the graveyard. If it is summoned, you get to add up to 2 Ancient Gear cards and or gear down from your deck to your hand. Then you discard 1 card, but you can set cards for the rest of this turn, and it also disables back row on attacks. So this one is also a skill target and a much more important combo piece, considering that it searches up to 2 cards for you, which is great. Especially considering that it can search more combo pieces, which is fantastic. You'll notice the condition that you can't set cards after activating this card's effect. This is a condition that you're going to get to see on a couple more cards, but just so you know, it prevents you from setting cards through cards effects like Book of Moon or Book of Eclipse also, so don't play those in Ancient Gear. Dark Golem is a really important monster, but there are many ways to get it out on the field, so you don't really need to run more than 2. Ancient Gear Statue is one such way. It is a level 2 Earth Machine monster with 500 attack and 800 defense, which can special summon itself if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, and can tribute itself in order to special summon an Ancient Gear Golem or a monster monster that mentions it from your hand or deck, ignoring its summoning condition. Statue is just fantastic. It's a card that summons your best cards from the deck for basically free. What more can you ask for? Run this one at 3 copies, always. Ancient Gear Commander is also one of the most important cards in the deck, and it has a lot of text. As a level 4 Earth Machine monster with 500 attack and 2000 defense, it allows you to send an AGG from your hand, deck, or face-up monster zone to get an additional normal summon, and if you normal summon Ancient Gear Golem, you get to summon Ancient Gear Golem from your hand or graveyard, ignoring its summoning conditions. Last but not least, you can banish this card from your graveyard to place one face-up Ancient Gear Continuous Trap from your hand on your field. Commander is really important. The fact that it gives you an extra normal summon and sets up and can revive Ancient Gear Golem makes it one of the most important combo piece of this archetype. The graveyard effect might also come up with exactly one trap, which is how it's basically used in the TCG. I would recommend running from 1 to 2 copies of this card. It is searchable with the skill and not imperative to run at 3 copies. Ancient Gear Tanker is also a level 4 Earth Machine monster with 1300 attack and defense, and can, on summon, special summon one Ancient Gear monster from your hand, ignoring summoning condition, or from the graveyard if your opponent controls a monster. It can also destroy a face-up card you control, including itself, in order to give all Ancient Gear Golem monsters and monsters that mention it 600 attack for the rest of the turn. Tanker's a really good starter, extender. Anything that you want it to be, can be rank 4 material, can get rid of your continuous spells in order to float into more stuff. What more can you ask for? Also, since it mentions Ancient Gear Golem by name, it's yet another scaled target. This archetype is just so good. Tankers are really good cards. I personally like running 3. I could understand why people would only run 2 though. Ancient Gear Wyvern is a card all Duel Links players are all too familiar with, and also a level 4 Earth Machine monster with 1700 attack and 1200 defense. On summon, it allows you to get any Ancient Gear card from your deck to your hand, but prevents you from setting for the rest of the turn, and if it attacks, it prevents your opponent's monsters from activating their effects until the end of the damage step. Wyvern is really good because it searches for anything and everything, but it is not a skill target because it does not mention Ancient Gear Golem, and is not as good as Ancient Gear Dark Golem as far as searching for more combo pieces go. You'll notice that it also has the restriction of preventing you from setting cards the turn that you summon it, which all Duel Links player might also be familiar with. Anyway, Wyvern's a fine card. The fact that it's not a skill target is kind of an issue, which is why I would not recommend running 3 copies. 1 to 2 copies of it is usually fine. Ancient Gear Dragon is another new piece of support, a level 5 Earth Machine monster with 500 attack and 2500 defense that cannot be special summoned. Let's just ignore that. If you control no monster or you control only Earth Machine monster, you can normal summon this card without tributing, and when your opponent activates a spell or trap card or effect, you get to send to the graveyard one Machine monster from hand or face-up field or one Ancient Gear Golem from your deck to negate it. On the plus side, Dragon does offer a way to disrupt your opponent that's not too difficult to set up, but on the other hand, setting it up does require you to devote a couple of your resources to it rather than do something else that would, in my opinion, be more productive. Whether you play Dragon or not is up to personal preference. I personally don't, but it can be fun to experiment with. Ancient Gear Box is a level 4 Earth Machine monster with 500 attack and 2000 defense, with its only effect being that when it is added from the deck or graveyard to the end except by drawing it, you get to add one Earth Machine monster with 500 attack or defense from your deck to your hand. Search targets include Ancient Gear Commander, Ancient Gear Statue, and Ancient Gear Dragon, but in order to search with it, you first have to search it, which means you're not searching something else, and if you happen to open it or draw it for turn, you're basically shit out of luck. For this reason, I am personally not running Ancient Gear Box, but if you decide to run it, play no more than 1 copy. Ancient Gear Frame is also a level 4 Earth Machine monster with 1600 attack and 500 defense, which allows you to discard 1 card to get Ancient Gear Golem or a back row that specifically mentions it. Also prevents your opponent from activating back row on attack declaration, and if it leaves the field because of an opponent's card effects, you get to special summon up to 3 Ancient Gear Golem or Ancient Gear Golem Ultimate Pound from your hand, ignoring the summoning condition. Technically, Ancient Gear Frame is a skill target because it does mention AGG by name, but it's vastly inferior to Dark Golem in what it does. Why would you discard 1 card to search 1 card when you could summon 1 card and get 2 cards? Unfortunately, this means that for the time being, Ancient Gear Frame is not worth playing. Here's another one for all Duel Links players, Ancient Gear Reactor Dragon, a level 9 Earth Machine monster with 3000 attack and defense, which has a bunch of effect I'm not gonna bother reading, because this card is not compatible with the deck's new playstyle focusing around Ancient Gear Golem exclusively. Sorry Ancient Gear Reactor Dragon, but you are not worth playing in this day and age. Thank you for all the wins you got me in 2019. Ancient Gear Hunting Hound is a level 3 Earth Machine monster with 1000 attack and defense, which burns your opponent for 600 when normal summoned, and can fusion summon an Ancient Gear Fusion monster using monster from your hand or field as material. That seems like a decent effect at first, right? But Ancient Gears have their own fusion spell that is vastly superior to this card. I would not recommend running it either. There are a bunch more of Ancient Gear monsters that are not worth talking about because they're either mediocre at best or do not mention Ancient Gear Golem, probably both to be honest. But I will say that Ancient Gear Gajiltron Dragon was the cover card of the structure deck Machine Revolt, which was the first Yu-Gi-Oh! Structure deck that I ever got. Wow, I am old. Spells and traps. Ancient Gear Fortress is probably the most important card in the deck. It is a continuous spell that says that Ancient Gear monsters cannot be targeted with card effects on the turn that they are summoned, and they can be destroyed by card effects either. It also prevents your opponent from activating cards or effects in response to the activation of Ancient Gear cards or effects. And if it is destroyed while in the back row, you get to summon one Ancient Gear Golem from your hand or graveyard, but prevents you from special summoning monsters for the rest of the turn except Ancient Gear monsters. This card was already good in 2019 and it is still good today because it is insane protection and has a lot of combo potential as well. Like I've said before, it is probably the most important card in the deck, which makes it extra painful that the only way to get it is to purchase the Structure Deck EX in which it released. Unfortunately for you all free-to-play players, you probably need this card at least 2 copies in order to play Ancient Gears seriously. Ancient Gear Advance is another continuous spell that allows you to search an Ancient Gear back row when it is activated, and allows you to tribute one monster to draw a card and gain the ability to normal summon Ancient Gear Golem or level 5 or higher monster that mention it without tributing this turn. The fact that it is yet another searcher for this archetype is really what's most important here. This card is insanely good, and getting an additional draw is an effect that can come up sometimes, considering that you can tribute any monster, not just an Ancient Gear monster. This card also has the very funny restriction of you can't set the turn that you activate it, which you really do have to keep in mind and build your deck around at this stage. Still, this card is way too good to pass. I would recommend playing 2 to 3 copies of it. Gear Town is not an Ancient Gear card by name, but it is a field spell that allows both players to normal summon Ancient Gear monsters from one less tribute, and when it is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you get to special summon one Ancient Gear monster from pretty much anywhere. Hey look, it's even more extension! Isn't that fun? Even though this is not an Ancient Gear card by name, there's a couple of ways to search it in the deck, Dark Golem being one of them, so this is still worth running at 1 copy. Also, make sure you don't miss the timing with it, that can happen. Ancient Gear Fusion is a, fusion spell that allows you to fusion summon one Ancient Gear Fusion monster using monsters from your hand or field as fusion material, but if you control Ancient Gear Golem or Ancient Gear Golem Ultimate Pound, you get to also use monsters from the deck. This card is the reason why we want to get Golem out on the field as soon as possible, because it just turns into a Shadow fusion that allows you to summon one of our big fusions, which is really important for the deck. Ancient Gear Fusion is fine at 2, it is a really searchable card, and not necessarily one that you want to open before you've done your old combo. Ancient Gear Catapult is another normal spell that allows you to destroy a face-up card you control to special summon one Ancient Gear monster from your deck ignoring its summoning condition, but only if you control no monsters, and which can banish itself from the graveyard to pop a face-up card you control in order to special summon one Ancient Gear token. But you can only use one of these 2 effects per turn. Catapult is basically one of the many ways through which we can pop Gear Town Fortress if needed, Advance maybe, if we need some more extension. And it is a card that you can set up in the graveyard super easily thanks to Dark Golem being able to both search it and discard it. The one thing that I have against this card is that the first effect requires you to control no monsters, which means it can get a little awkward at times, but it is still a fine enough card that you'd be fine running it at 1. Ancient Gear Duel is a continuous trap that is limited one for a reason. It protects Ancient Gear Golems and monsters that mention it from your opponent's activated monster effects. If your opponent controls a monster, you also get to fusion summon a monster that mentions Ancient Gear Golem from your extra deck by banishing monsters from your field or graveyard, including one Ancient Gear Golem you control, and that monster can make 3 attacks during each battle phase. So basically this card is also insane protection and a miracle fusion that your skill just sets up for free. Outside of your skill, you can also set it up by searching it with Dark Golem alongside Commander and sending Commander to the graveyard, which can banish itself to just put it face up on your field. But let's be honest, most of the time you're just getting it with the skill anyway. It's an insanely strong card, but it's limited one, so you can only play one copy of it. Ancient Gear Reborn is another continuous trap. If you control no monster, you get to revive an Ancient Gear monster, and it gains 200 attack. Yeah, this card seems like it would be interesting, but it's not. Don't bother playing it. Hey look! More Ancient Gear back row that is completely worthless. Don't play any of the cards I haven't mentioned so far, by the way. Extra deck. Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem is one of the boss monsters of all time. With fusion materials of 1 Ancient Gear Golem and 2 other Ancient Gear monsters, it pretty much has the same effect as Ancient Gear Golem, which is to say it has piercing and prevents your opponent from activating back row when it attacks, but it also floats into AGG, ignoring its summoning condition from the graveyard when it dies, and has 4400 attack, which is a big number. You get to summon it either through Ancient Gear Fusion or Ancient Gear Duel, though summoning it with Ancient Gear Duel is probably better because it will give it the ability to attack thrice, and also it's the only monster that you can summon through Ancient Gear Duel anyway. This guy has one job, and it's to end games as quickly as possible. What more can you ask for? Play one copy of this guy. Only one though, because our extra deck is kinda tight. Chaos Ancient Gear Giant is another boss monster for the archetype, the only Ancient Gear monster that's not an Earth machine, but instead a Dark machine. This one requires 4 Ancient Gear monsters as material, is completely unaffected by back row, and prevents your opponent from activating monster effects during the battle phase. It can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each, and also inflicts piercing, because it does not fuck around, especially with 4500 attack. So this is going to be the guy that you summon off of fusion. You can summon it through duel because it does not mention Ancient Gear Golem by name, which also means that it is vulnerable to monster effect. It is not protected by Ancient Gear Duel, but it has enough protections to just not care anyway about most stuff. It's just a big game ender, and that's basically all that it does, just end game on its own. You also run one copy, once again, our extra deck is kinda tight. Ancient Gear Howitzer is the last fusion that we run in our deck. It is a level 8 that requires 2 Ancient Gear monsters and is completely unaffected by other cards' effect. Allows you to burn your opponent for a solid 500 damage in Duel Links once per turn. And if it is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you get to special summon 1 Ancient Gear monster from your deck, ignoring its summoning condition, which is also pretty good. Howitzer is probably the best in archetype turn 1 option, which is not saying much, but the fact that it has immunity to pretty much everything and also floats on battle destruction makes it super useful in order to survive your turn 1 and OTK on the crackback. Howitzer is another safe one of. But yeah, there's also Ancient Gear Megaton Golem, which requires 3 Ancient Gear monsters, prevents your opponent from activating back row, can attack as many times as it has Ancient Gear Golems or Ancient Gear Golem's ultimate pond as fusion material, and can float into ultimate Ancient Gear Golem if it is removed from the field because of an opponent's card effect. That seems decent, especially on a 3300 attack monster, but this one doesn't really OTK on its own. It's just an inferior ultimate golem. And why would you play this when you could just play Ultimate Golem instead? Don't bother with it. As cool as it looks, Megaton Golem is just not worth it. And last but not least, there is the Link 2 Monster Ancient Gear Ballista with 1500 attack, and its arrows do not matter whatsoever. It requires 2 Earth Machine monsters to be summoned, not necessarily Ancient Gear ones, and if it is Link summoned, you get to add 1 Ancient Gear monster or a Gear Town to your hand, and then you can pop a back row that you control to change an opponent's monster stats to 0 for the turn. It's a cool little card that can both search and combo with Gear Town, which is what it is mostly used for, and the attack reduction makes it able to deal with larger threats like Red Nova Dragon, for instance. Ballista is also a safe one-off in our very tight extra deck. All the stuff. Ancient Gears are able to make a couple of rank 4 options. They don't really get archetype locked all that easily except with Fortress if you pop it. So here's a couple of rank 4 guys that I would recommend that you go into going first. Gear Gigantex can search Kytroid, and this is basically what we're using it for. We really want to survive until our next turn. Abyss Dweller just wins instantly against some matchups. It's just, well, there's a reason this card was banned in pretty much every format. And Full Armored Utopic Ray Lancer is a way to deal with Liberalisk, which just completely blanks the deck otherwise. I would not really recommend that you play other rank 4s, you don't really need those. Like, what's the point of playing Castel or Malevolent Sin when you can just punch with a big monster that's immune to everything? Because the deck can summon Golem and Dark Golem both pretty easily, you can also go into a couple of rank 8s. Xenophon the Sky Prison just wins some matchups on its own also, because it can summon from the graveyard and also survives Dark Hole, which is kinda neat. And Hieratic Sky Dragon Overlord of Heliopolis isn't the greatest card out there, but it's pretty good against Exis Sisters very specifically. Otherwise, I would not really recommend that you spend too much time thinking about which rank A you go into, you know? Urgent Schedule is a quick play that allows you to summon a level 4 or lower and a level 5 or higher of machine monsters from your deck with their effects negated if your opponent controls more monster that you do. And if it's pop, it gets you a level 10 machine monster, which you don't run in this deck. It's a fine card, especially if you're going second, but sometimes you're going to go first, open this and realize that it is completely dead, especially since your better Ancient Gear cards prevents you from setting at all the turn you want to activate them. Give it a try if you'd like, but it is definitely not necessary to play and enjoy Ancient Gears. Gizmek Tanigoku is a Earth Machine monster, so that works with the archetype. On summon, it allows you to place a machine monster with attack equal to its own defense, like it is the case with the Golems for instance, from your deck and place it on top, and then you get to banish it from your graveyard to revive a machine monster whose attack is equal its own defense. It combos well enough with Urgent Schedule. You can Urgent Schedule this and an Ancient Gear Dark Golem, for instance, link them both into a Ballista, then banish the Tanigoku in order to revive the Dark Golem, which will then allow you to activate the Dark Golem effect, which was previously negated because of the Urgent Schedule. Don't you forget this. But that requires you to run Urgent Schedule, and that's not something that I'm a fan of, so once again, up to personal preference. And last but not least, Therion King Regulus would fit perfectly with Ancient Gears. It is an Omni-Negate, but it's also not in Duel Links. Keep in mind that you can't really use backrow per se because so many of your cards prevent you from setting, and cards like Book of Moon or Book of Eclipse that require you to set your opponent's monster can't really be used either. So instead, try opting for some hand traps. Effect Veil is always a safe bet, but I'm personally a fan of drawing Lockbird, which makes the Liberalisk matchup slightly less miserable. The Ancient Gear game plan is delightfully simple. If you go first, your objective is to establish a board that will help you survive until your next turn where you can OTK. If you go second, your objective is to OTK, preferably with the big piercing multi-attacker fusions, but if you can do it with others, just go for it. Ideally, your turn 1 end board should be a combination of these monsters. Howitzer is probably your best shot at not dying, considering it's immune to pretty much everything and floats. Gear Gigant X being able to search Kytroid is a huge boon for the deck. Like I've mentioned before, sometimes the Abyss Dweller is just too valuable, and Xenophon is also a pretty decent card. Going second, the name of the game is Resolve Ancient Gear Fusion or Ancient Gear Duel's Fusion effect and summon a big fusion that can attack multiple times to kill your opponent dead. Sure, you have a bunch of combos, searchers, extenders, but they all serve the one singular purpose of destroying your opponent until there is nothing left. If you're interested in building Ancient Gear, here is the deck core that I would recommend that you try. Please note that this isn't a completed deck, just a basis upon which to improve. You'll notice, for instance, there is only one commander and one wyvern. You're free to include more and test out ratios as you try and test this deck out on the field. This screenshot is meant to be a helping hand to those who don't know where to start rather than a definite deck list, which it definitely isn't. Strengths and weaknesses of Ancient Gears. First and foremost, it sure OTKs super easily. It's insane how easily you get to make a big fusion and kill your opponent with it. The protection granted through Fortress and Duel is also insane and pretty much prevents your opponent from disrupting your plays altogether. And thanks to your skill, it is also super consistent and you will get to make the same plays over and over and over again, which is a good thing. And now for the weaknesses. Its turn 1 is pretty miserable. You know, even if you do make Howitzer plus Dweller plus Xenophon pass, it's not like it's the most difficult endboard to take care of, especially for the more competent decks out there. Something very funny to note with Howitzer, it will not trigger under Abyss Dweller or similar effect. There's an Nexus Sister that does something, but I forgot the name of it. And if it gets destroyed by battle with Red Dragon Archfiend, the Red Dragon Archfiend's effect will trigger, which will destroy the Howitzer by effect destruction, because it is no longer immune because some weird drooling, so Howitzer will not trigger if it is destroyed by Red Dragon Archfiend is what you need to remember. So that's one for the Resonator matchup. Games you will play with Ancient Gear tend to be rather coin flippy. Either you go second and you manage to OTK, or you go first and you probably get OTK'd. And given that this is Duel Links, a game where you do not get to decide whether you go first or second, that can be problematic. And last but not least, some matchups are just straight up miserable. Lyrilusk is a matchup that strikes me as intensely wrong because you don't really have an archetype out for Assemble Nightingale, and Assemble Nightingale just single-handedly negates your entire deck, which, no. In conclusion, I feel like Ancient Gear's place of the metagame is yet undiscovered. Is it strong enough to warrant being considered one of the best decks of this format? Or is it too coin flippy to even warrant attention? I'm not sure. All that I know is it is definitely something you should be wary of when playing on ladder. It is definitely a great option for reaching COG and will probably be very popular in the upcoming KC Cups, provided it doesn't get nerfed first, of course. Thank you all for watching this video. I do hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to like this video, comment something nice about Ancient Gears, and subscribe if you haven't already. Additionally, if you'd like to support me further, you can check out my Ko-fi in the video description, where you can make a one-time donation or a monthly pledge. I would like to thank my Ko-fi donators in the forms of Dingust, HowdishBoy0, Jimmy, Zinnia, Yannick, Sile, Mark Lu, 14016, the Abysacta Guru, Orc Price, and Exorcist. Thank you all for the support. And that's it for this video, I guess. Hope that you have lots of fun playing Ancient Gears, and hope that your opponents have zero fun playing against Ancient Gears. I know this is a deck that is probably going to be very polarizing, so let me get that out of the way. I will love and defend Ancient Gears until my last breath. Thank you all for watching the video once again. Take care everyone, and I will see you all next time.